Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Welcome to the Grassroots Business Journal. I am your host, Paul Wilusz, talking business meets the social media. My guest today is Bonnie Stewart, Vice President of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. We already had one program where we talked a little bit about the organization and
Yes.
what it does a little bit. But now let's talk to our audience a little bit about some of the activities that the CBIA does within the state itself. And I know that you have an economic summit. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what is your role in that event?
Sure. In every January at the start of the year, we have an economic summit. And that's an opportunity. We usually bring someone in from the Federal Reserve to talk, business leaders, and it's an opportunity for them to talk about what they're projecting, some of the issues that we're facing currently, so some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, ways they may have gone about changing what they were doing to provide better services, products, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
So this past January, we had in Eric Rosengren from the Federal Reserve, and he did a really good job talking about some of the initiatives that are out there and how they impact business. So for example, one of the things that was discussed was talking about what happens when you raise the minimum wage in terms of a mandate. And he said, well, if you do that generally, you will either find companies cut back in terms of their investments into their facilities, in terms of the technology, for example.
Okay.
You also may see some fewer opportunities for youth because the more you're paying somebody in terms of a starting wage, the more experience that you want. So little different conversations like that. We had a gentleman, actually the CEO of Stanley Black & Decker come and did a great job talking about how they've changed their marketing and why they changed it and the impact that's having. That was incredible. At the end, everyone was, proud to be an American, proud to be in Connecticut, and loved black and yellow because Stanley did such a good job at the program.
Okay.
So a lot of different discussions. It's an excellent opportunity to learn from others.
Okay. I know that over the past few years, we've gone through an economic downturn, and unemployment within the state has been up. Businesses are looking for the cheapest way to get their bottom lines increased, possibly moving out of the state. How can we keep businesses here in the state of Connecticut, number one? And number two, how can we keep a talented workforce here?
Those are all excellent questions. Otherwise, you wouldn't have raised them. But I think that it's something, or those questions are things that we all need to focus in on, because Connecticut has been dropping in terms of our economic competitiveness as a state. That's a problem because as a resident of Connecticut, I want there to be lots of opportunities, not only for me, but for my children and hopefully eventually someday my grandkids.
Exactly.
But right now, we're not seeing that we're where we need to be across the board. So what I mean by that is there's some great things about Connecticut. So we've got a great quality of life. We come out very high in the rankings there. Our education system's been dropping in numbers, but we're still very high. So that's another area we do well. But we don't do well on other factors. What we need to do is to focus in on moving Connecticut up that economic ladder. So what programs do we put in place here? What do we do in terms of making sure that we've got the infrastructure we need going forward? Those are all keys, not only for making sure that there are great opportunities for those of us who are here planning on staying, but it's also really important for those who may want to stay. So for our kids that are graduating from high school and college, if we want them later on, they've got to have job opportunities if they're going to stay here in Connecticut. So we need to do a lot. We need to pay attention to those different factors on those competitiveness rankings. What do we look at in terms of the cost of doing business, transportation? Talent is key. Do we have an education system in place? Do we have a job training system in place that will support our people and our companies? We have to do a lot. There are other states out there that we're competing with. It's a global economy, but right now New York's governor is going after every CEO in Connecticut that's the head of a manufacturing company saying, move here, move here. And therefore Connecticut needs to, raise its game. We need to really start looking at specific issues and addressing problems while looking at the big picture. How do we move CT up?
You talked about the need for the growth in talent.
Yes.
Are companies using their training to meet that particular need, or is that becoming more onto the is it falling more onto the community colleges? I know that there's been the governor and the other initiatives that they're trying to deal with more programs at the community college level. Therefore, it's putting a lot of stress in their educational settings. So my question is that how is training being utilized here to get that workforce to the talent that it needs to be?
I think what you're seeing in terms of the community colleges is it's starting to morph the way it did years ago in a lot of the southern states. So for example, I remember when I started at CBIA 25 years ago, the then chair of Stanley Works saying, I just go to South Carolina and I say, I need this program. They have it in place at the community college within 2 weeks. They pull it together, they get it, we have our training needs met there. That wasn't the case here in Connecticut. So you do see a lot of programs starting to come up, or ones that have come up be duplicated in other schools. So for example, Tunxus has a great program for manufacturing. Now you're seeing some of the other community colleges throughout the state develop those same programs. So they're replicating those in some of the other schools. Okay. That's real important because we have a lot of manufacturing jobs that are going unfilled in Connecticut right now. That's good pay, good benefits. We need to do something to make sure that our education and training system meets the needs of the potential workforce and the companies in Connecticut. In terms of what companies are doing now, some have found that the schools are not meeting their needs, so they started their own apprenticeship programs. So having incentives or aids such as a tax credit for apprenticeship programs is very important. It's expensive to put together a program like that, so we want to encourage employers to do that if that's what's needed to keep them here and to grow their workforce. An apprenticeship tax credit's a great way to go. But there's other things that employers are doing. One of the things that we've found over the years is that more and more employers are having to put in remedial programs at their company. And when I'm talking about remedial, I'm not talking about on machining, etc. I'm talking about math and English and technology, math and English in particular. So what we really need to do is to make sure that our education system in Connecticut is providing students with the opportunity to learn. If they're not on track, giving them the support and the teachers the support they need to get the students on track. So when people are graduating from Connecticut high schools, they're graduating with the skills they need to enter the workforce and the skills the employers need to bring them into the workforce. So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of talent, and we've got a lot of things set in place. We need to make sure that the reforms are implemented the way they were intended, but we still have a lot of opportunities out there in terms of developing other programs to meet the needs, again, of the people of Connecticut trying to enter the workforce and of the businesses in Connecticut trying to bring people into their companies.
Okay. Trying to think of a little bit of it. I know you had mentioned, and I know that a person going out there as a small business or that a business that's been out there for a while, I know they're talking about the tax issues and the tax structure. And I know the buzzword that's going around is around from the national government trying to restructure the tax codes, etc. What can a small business look forward to within the present tax structure, or what can be done to help change that tax structure here within the state?
I think one of the biggest problems is that most people don't realize that the bulk of businesses pay their business taxes through the personal income tax. So you hear oftentimes, oh, well, this is how much you paid, businesses paid in their corporate income tax. But the only people who pay their business taxes through the corporate income taxes are the larger C corporations. So the bulk of companies in Connecticut are what they call pass-through entities. They're limited liability companies or partnerships or sole proprietors, and they pay through the personal income tax. Okay. So when the legislature is talking about, going after the wealthy, oftentimes they're hitting very hard Connecticut small businesses, okay. And that's problematic. So they have seen significant tax increases with the changes that have been made at the state level on the personal income tax over the last several years. And any more money that you're taking from them means it's less money for them to invest in their people and their facilities here in Connecticut. So I think we need to keep in mind that when we're talking about the income tax, that we remember that it's not just an income tax on individuals, it's an income tax on the bulk of Connecticut companies. So that's important. So therefore, when you're talking about what do you do, how do you possibly modify it to make it more, I'm going to say incentive driven, okay. Things that you can do to help Connecticut's or encourage Connecticut's private companies to invest in Connecticut, whether it be in their people or their facility. So there are things we can do, such as allowing an apprenticeship tax credit for those pass-through entities. If someone's putting a program in place to bring people in and train them and get them the skills they need so they've got a good job with good wages and benefits, that's to everyone's benefit. Let's give them the credit for that. Because the schools are not all, unfortunately, meeting the needs of Connecticut employers or their people. That doesn't mean that we don't have any good programs. We do, but there's more needed, so the apprenticeship tax credit is a great way to go about that. Another area would be research and development. We all know that those bring in good jobs, again, good wages, and also if you're creating something in Connecticut, you're more likely to produce it in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. So correct. A research and development tax credit for those pass-through entities would also be key. We want to do stuff that encourages private sector investment in Connecticut. And if you have those credits based on activities in Connecticut, whether it be an apprenticeship program or research and development, you're helping Connecticut and the people of Connecticut, not just somebody from the outside that comes and sells in Connecticut. Okay. So there's certain things we can do to really benefit. Straightening out our sales tax system. It's very complicated. That's really hard for our smaller businesses, which are the bulk of Connecticut businesses. We need to do something to make it more user-friendly.
Okay. I know we couple more items I really want to maybe just touch on, because I know that would like to have you come back again and talk on other issues. Very briefly, the tax incentives for hiring people here within the businesses, how have you seen that being worked, and how successful has that been within the state of Connecticut?
There's just the plain job tax credit alone is not a tax credit that's used a whole lot. But the step-up program and the JET program, the Job Expansion Tax program, two fairly new programs that have been started in Connecticut, have been used quite a bit. And I think part of that is because, in part, you have training dollars there as well. It's not just hire someone. You can hire someone and then you could get assistance in training them. So that makes a big difference. It's not that there aren't people out there. We have a lot of people out there that are looking for jobs. We've seen our unemployment rate. But do we have people out there with the skills we need oftentimes? And that's one of the biggest problems that Connecticut faces. We've got great people with potential talent, but they're not to the level we need them at right now. So when you have some of those programs where you're helping them out in terms of you're bringing someone on, and then the state's going to help in terms of their training costs for the first 6 months, whatever. Those are great programs, and those are ones that a lot of the smaller employers that don't have an established training program at their company are using. So those are a benefit for Connecticut small employers, particularly our manufacturers right now that are looking for people with specific skills, and they know what skills they need. This can help them get the dollars to give the people those skills they need.
Okay. Well, I know that we're coming to the end of the program here. How can someone get back in touch with you and to talk with you further, issue their concerns or become involved?
Love to have them touch base with us. All of our contact information is on CBIA.com. But if you want to contact me directly, Bonnie, Bonnie.Stewart, Stewart, @CBIA.com. Or you can give us a call at CBIA, and our main number is 860-244-1900, and we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Bonnie, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. You've been watching the Grassroots Business Journal. I've been your host, Paul Wilusz, talking business around the state of Connecticut. Until next time, keep talking business. We'd love to hear from you.